Congratulations, true crime addicts. We've survived another week. It is Friday, May 24th, 2024. This week, police make progress in the hunt for a famous serial killer. A psychedelic trip leaves one man dead in Australia. And the latest in the Mica Miller case. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Yes, super excited. We are all pumped to have James Renner.
James Renner on.
That James Renner has zeroed in on.
James Renner once again drops a bombshell.
Investigative journalist, reporter James Renner, who's been on the podcast, longtime friend of mine.
And we're back with True Crime This Week with me, your host, James Renner. Still kicking. Hey, some big news this week at the top of the show. I have another podcast. It's probably just a one-off. It might just be this one episode. Who knows? We'll see. It's called The Curse of Moore Murray. It's about a half an hour long. It's on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get podcasts. Check it out. The Curse of Moore Murray. It tells my experience from reporting on the case behind the scenes. And let me tell you, you're going to hear everything you probably didn't really want to know, but probably should. It's been a crazy time reporting on that case since 2011. I'm giving you the dish, I'm giving you the tea. You might even learn some new things about possible evidence, details, suspects in the case. Check it out when you get a chance. And as always, I want to thank Walter, my buddy, who's manning the camera. Walter's just back from the Cannes Film Festival, where he took in a screening of Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola's latest. He says it's okay. Let's get to those top stories this week. And the top of the list, I did not expect to talk about this case this week, and it's amazing. It was amazing to watch this kind of unfold. It's still unfolding. It's a big serial killer case. We don't get those too often anymore. Here we go. Thanks to genetic genealogy, serial killers are becoming an endangered species. After the arrest of the Golden State Killer and the Long Island serial killer, there are very few remaining prolific killers in the United States. One of the last big ones is the Connecticut River Valley Killer, who terrorized women in Vermont and New Hampshire between 1978 and 1988, leaving behind at least 7 victims. But suddenly, this week, the case is very active again, because on Tuesday, New Hampshire State Police descended on a residence in Kellyville, which is a neighborhood of Newport in New Hampshire, a small town not far from where the bodies of a couple of the serial killer's victims were found, according to WMUR. Reporters on the scene saw dozens of cruisers parked along the dead-end street and dozens of trash bags piled up outside of a barn. The police were there to execute a search warrant on the property, and sources say it involves a possible suspect in these cold case murders. The 2 victims who were found in the area were 17-year-old Bernice Cordemanchi and 25-year-old Ellen Freed. Bernice was last seen in Claremont and had been hitchhiking along Route 12 into Newport. Ellen was a nurse at Valley Regional Hospital and had stopped to use a payphone in Claremont at 2 a.m. one morning. The murders appeared to have stopped in 1988 after 22-year-old Jane Borowski was attacked in Keene, New Hampshire, and she survived that violent assault, providing police with the description of the man. Jane, who was pregnant at the time, was stabbed 27 times, but managed to drive away to get help. Now, I got an opportunity to meet her in Arkansas. Was it last year or the year before? Not too long ago, at another crime convention down there. And she's just great. She's a very strong woman. She's open to talking about it. I really liked her. And she's out there in the press about this search this week. Police have yet to reveal if they found anything significant in the search, but this could be the very beginning of a very big story in the weeks to come. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about the case, I highly recommend picking up the book The Shadow of Death by Philip Ginsberg. That's the book on the case, and it was written quite a few years ago, but it's very comprehensive. It still holds up. It's one of my favorite true crime books of all time. The inquest into the death of Jarrad Antonovich at a cult-like ayahuasca retreat continued in Australia this week with some pretty wild testimony, according to The Guardian. Jarrad was 46 years old and was suffering from the effects of a brain injury he suffered from a car crash several years ago. Now, at the time of his death, he was writing a book about spirituality and exploring different forms of healing. In October 2021, Jarrad attended a 6-day retreat in the Northern Rivers region of New South Wales, hoping to open his mind to a new state of being by submitting himself to very powerful hallucinogenics. At the beginning of the week, Jarrad took part in a Cambo ritual, where participants are given burns on their body to open up their skin, and then the toxic secretions of a poisonous frog are rubbed on their wounds. It's obviously quite painful, but it's also an ancient religious rite of certain South American tribes. However, it is still very much illegal in Australia. Ayahuasca is also illegal down under. This hallucinogenic drink has gained popularity here in the States, but when it's very dangerous still if not taken correctly and monitored. One witness who took the stand this week described how it was fairly common for participants to vomit and then shit their pants after drinking ayahuasca. And honestly, if you're going to pay for that experience, it's probably cheaper to do what we did in college and shotgun 6 natty lights. The ayahuasca ceremony was led by a man named Solar Solaris. How much you want to bet his real name is something like Tim Smith? Nobody's going to go to an ayahuasca retreat with Tim Smith, though. I understand. Jarrad died after drinking the ayahuasca, and he curled up in a fetal position where he was crying out in agony before his death. About an hour after he died, Solaris asked a fellow participant to drive to town and tell his roommate that he was dead, but to please not say anything about the ayahuasca because he wanted to protect their sacred drugs. It's a very sad story, very interesting story, but very sad, and I think it says something about modern society at this time. We have so much stress today with all the social media and technology that we're just going at 1,000 miles per hour every second of the day, that we will go to these extreme lengths like Jarrad did to find just a little comfort. So it's understandable, but very, very dangerous. So watch yourself, people. In Australia, the inquest continues. The Hamilton County coroner identified a new victim of serial killer Herb Baumeister this week, according to Fox 59. Baumeister is suspected of killing as many as 22 young men in and around Westfield, Indiana, before his death in 1996. Now check this guy out. This is one of those creepy, professional-type serial killers nobody would suspect. This is not the guy you see and go, oh, yeah, he's got some people in his backyard. This guy's like an accountant. If you've never heard of Baumeister, though, let me give you the goods, as the kids say. That nobody says that anymore. Baumeister was a businessman from Indianapolis who started exhibiting antisocial behavior as a teen, getting caught playing with dead animals and urinating on his teachers' desks. His father did his best to get him the help he needed, having him committed on a number of occasions. He managed to become... This guy, in many ways, reminds me of Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, the same kind of childhood. His father at times tried to get him help. He's playing with dead animals. There's a lot of similarities here. Somebody should hopefully study his brain if they didn't. He managed to become a somewhat successful businessman, running a thrift store chain in Indianapolis, and he married a woman in 1971. Now, he had 3 kids with her, but she later said that she'd only had sex with him about 6 times in their 25-year marriage. Baumeister was a closeted homosexual. He would frequent gay bars in the area, and soon young men began to disappear. He purchased a large rural property in 1988, which he called Fox Hollow Farm. In 1994, Baumeister's son was walking around the farm when he discovered a complete human skeleton, partially buried in the ground. Baumeister was able to explain that it had been a study specimen from his father's work. His father was an anesthesiologist, and he was able to bury it again in their property without raising much suspicion. In the early 90s, Indianapolis police began to actively investigate the disappearances of several of these gay men from the area, and in 1994 they were contacted by a man who'd gotten a license plate number of the person he believed took one of the missing men. That license number led them to Herb Baumeister. Police went to Baumeister's house and asked to search his home. Baumeister told them no, and shortly thereafter, his wife began to suspect that her husband had some pretty dark secrets and some serious issues, so she filed for divorce. After he left, the police returned and she allowed them to search the property. There, they discovered 10,000 pieces of human remains. That's not the number of victims, but he had taken their body parts and bones and cut them up into little pieces and like pulverized them. Police suspect the remains belong to at least 12 separate men, and they've been trying to identify them ever since. By the way, the police also suspect that Baumeister is the notorious I-70 strangler, a man who killed at least 11 young men and dropped their bodies along the interstate. Those bodies stopped showing up right at the time that Baumeister bought his farm. Now, when Baumeister learned that the police were onto him, he fled to Canada and then shot himself in the head at a public park. He died by suicide. But this week, police announced that they used genetic genealogy to link some of the remains at that farm to Jeffrey Jones, a 31-year-old man who was reported missing in 1993. Their press release also stated that they have sent 4 more DNA samples to the FBI for further testing. That's one creepy case. Those are the top stories. I'll be right back after the break with updates in the Mica Miller case, as well as there was a new search at Rex Heuerman's house. We're talking about the Gilgo Beach murders here. Lots more to come. Stay tuned. I'll be back in 2 and 2.
Please hang up and try again.
And we're back with I Married Dora, starring Daniel Hugh Kelly. That was a weird show, man. Anybody remember that from the 80s? A guy marries his housekeeper so she could get her green card. Mayhem ensued. Let's jump over to cold cases. Here are your updates. Pennsylvania police announced this week that Ian Thomas Cleary has been caught in France after 3 years on the run for a 2011 rape that occurred at Gettysburg College, according to NBC News. Cleary was a 20-year-old student at Gettysburg in 2013. So the rape occurred in 2013. Sorry, strike that, reverse that. Here it is. He was a student at Gettysburg in 2013, where he allegedly stalked an 18-year-old girl and then snuck into her dorm and raped her while she texted her friend for help. The victim, Shannon Keeler, who wants to be identified in this story, did everything she was supposed to do. She went to police, she subjected herself to a rape kit, and asked them to charge him. But when Cleary didn't return for the next semester of school in Pennsylvania, the university basically washed their hands of the matter, and the police declined to investigate it further. Then, in 2021, Cleary sent Keeler a message on Facebook that read, quote, "So I raped you." He also said, quote, "I'll never do it again. I'll never do it to anyone ever again. I need to hear your voice," end quote. And then she took that to police and said, "Hey, guys, I've got evidence now," and still they weren't doing anything. It was only after an Associated Press article about underreported rapes on college campuses that spurred them to action, shamed the police for not taking action, and they immediately sought an indictment. Cleary has been on the run ever since then. Well, he was found in Metz, France on April 24th. This was just announced this week, though. He was detained in France on the street. There seemed to have been some reason to check him at the time, and when they found out he was wanted for rape back in the States, they brought him in. He told police that he did not have housing there. Pennsylvania prosecutors are now seeking extradition, and he will likely be brought back to the States to face trial. He also has this weird website that I was checking out. It's like his main personal website, but it's a WordPress, and he's selling his books on there, and they're like really bad medieval fiction that are like, it's like 50 pages, and he's charging people $25 for there. So, he's kind of a con artist too. But, I'd say we're less concerned about that than, the rapes. So luckily he's been arrested and now that they've got him. So nice work, guys. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has begun a parallel investigation connected to the death of Mica Miller, according to People.com. Mica was found dead at the Lumber River State Park after she split with her creepy pastor husband, John Paul Miller, who you've seen all over TikTok and other social media in the last couple weeks. Now, Miller died by suicide after purchasing a gun at a pawn shop, but armchair sleuths have been suggesting the video footage of her at the store and the audio from her call to 911 is all actually AI, which is just, it's stupid. It's not AI, guys. But Mica's case has become the biggest true crime story on social media in recent weeks, and these new details about their troubled marriage have emerged pretty much every day. You get new information about this, and it just makes John Paul look really, really bad. And he's got a rap sheet. He's done really horrible things in the past. So it looks like maybe the FBI is involved because there might be more crimes. In fact, a spokesman for the sheriff's office told People.com that the FBI's investigation is not related to Mica's death, but other crimes. If the rumors circulating about John Paul are true, and all you have to do is do a Google search, I'm not even going to mention some of the stuff because it's that crazy, there may well be charges in his future. So you might get what you're looking for. Police returned to the home of Rex Heuerman this week to search for more evidence tying the architect to the Long Island serial killer murders, according to the New York Post. Police executed a search warrant on Monday and returned for the next 2 days this week, searching every inch of his house. Last year, they spent 13 days searching the same residence. Heuerman is in prison awaiting trial for the murders of 4 women, 27-year-old Amber Costello, 24-year-old Melissa Barthelemy, 24-year-old Nicole Smith, and 22-year-old Megan Waterman. When reached, the Suffolk County DA refused to provide details about the new search or what it was that detectives thought they missed last year. Now, while charged with these 4 murders, Heuerman may still be a suspect in the murders of several other women whose bodies were found in Gilgo Beach on Long Island, as well as murdered women in other states that he had also visited. They're looking at this guy for a lot of other murders right now. So we should know more about what they found soon. It was reported after I'd written this copy that some of the things they pulled from the house this week included rope and paint chips. So we'll know more soon. A writer and producer from the TV show Scrubs was ordered on Tuesday to stand trial on 28 counts of rape and sexual battery, according to the New York Times. Producer Eric Weinberg is accused of sexually assaulting at least 5 women between 2014 and 2019. Prosecutors say he lured the women to private photo shoots and then attacked them. He would allegedly approach the women in public and tell them he was a photographer and ask them to come to his house, which is just the thing a serial killer says. Now, he's not alleged to have killed anybody, but this has happened before. A pretty well-known serial killer did this exact same thing. So anyways, he lures them to his house using his Hollywood credentials, although I don't know that I'd brag about being a producer on Scrubs, especially after that 9th season. And he used that to convince them he was legit. Weinberg has been sitting in jail since October 2022 after a judge revoked his $5 million bail. I wonder how many other producers are in that LA jail. How many other Hollywood professionals? It's a wild town, people. Weinberg is scheduled to be arraigned June 4th. Let's jump over to weird news. Charlotte Ruse recently took her 5 kids on a family vacation to Pismo Beach on California's Central Coast, according to the New York Post. The kids were excited to visit the beach and promptly started collecting seashells along the shoreline. But then an agent with the Department of Fish and Wildlife showed up and wrote Charlotte a ticket for fishing without a license. And when she returned home, she got a letter in the mail informing her that she had been fined $88,000. Turns out those weren't seashells the kids had gathered, but very much alive Pismo clams. Now, due to overfishing, the number of clams have dwindled and people are required to get a license to harvest them, and they can only take 10 at a time, which is barely enough for an afternoon snack. After Charlotte spoke to a judge, she was able to get the fine reduced to $500. Now, to me, this stinks as just another money grab by California officials. I mean, how shellfish can you get? Is this thing on? I said, okay, I'll move on. Let's go over to pop culture. The true crime documentary series of the week is from Fox Nation, which leaves me with a little ick, but it's definitely worth watching. I'm talking about Unsolved with author James Patterson. Now, if you haven't seen it yet, America's most prolific writer examines the unsolved homicides of Nanette Krenel, Elizabeth Salgado, and Brian Egg. All three of these cases I was totally unfamiliar with, and I like the shows that focus on these less popular cases, and it seems he's using his fame to bring attention to them, so I'm definitely going to check that out. The book of the week is one that is very interesting. It's called Killing Time with John Wayne Gacy by Karen Conti. Here's the write-up. John Wayne Gacy raped, tortured, and murdered 33 boys and young men, burying most of them in a crawl space under his Chicago home. Karen Conti was in high school at the time, watching the bodies being removed on the television news. 14 years pass. Through a twist of fate, Conti, now a young and inexperienced attorney, is called upon to handle Gacy's final death row appeals. The serial killer soon becomes her most famous, difficult, and haunting client. 30 years after Gacy's execution, Conti looks back through the eyes of a seasoned professional on the legal and media circus that ensued and her countless hours of detailed conversation with the killer clown. We hear for the first time about Gacy's gruesome body book. Were there more victims? Conspirators involved in the murders? What secrets were buried with him? If one were to ask Conti, how could you represent such a monster? She would respond, what you really want to know is, what was he like? This book answers that question. So check that out. That's a definite read for me. And that's the show for this week. I am off next week. Sorry, I'm gonna skip next Friday. I will be in Nashville at CrimeCon, and knock on wood, hopefully everything goes smoothly this year. But I'm looking forward to seeing some old friends and other authors and podcasters. So we'll see in about 2 weeks. And in the meantime, go out and have a little fun. In the words of the incomparable Murray Saul, the godfather of Cleveland radio, we gotta get down, damn it. True Crime This Week is a Fearful Symmetry production. Photo and artwork are licensed through Shutterstock. If you like the cut of my jib, I have another podcast you might enjoy called The Philosophy of Crime, in which I attempt to solve the big questions behind our true crime obsession by looking to philosophy for answers. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Sit, Brownie, sit. Good dog.